I haven't been great at it either, but I've been forcing belief, if you will. Like obviously, like I'm a Christian, so there's the God piece of it that always comes in for me. But I listen to guys like even Andy, although he speaks a lot less religiousness than like an Ed Milet, right? But Ed does it all the time. And like the belief in the manifestation, Joe Dispenza, right? There's a ton of guys out there that do this. And I was like, there's got to be something here, right? It can't just be like people are just talking this game to sell people on a product. So I've just made it a goal every day this year. I'm going to spend 5+ days visualizing, and we'll see what happens. And some days are very hard, other days are not. But I just realized like I would try it, and I would do it one day a week, and it wasn't adding up to anything. I could never feel a change. I couldn't like force myself into this like meditative place. I was really bad at meditation, but now I'm like, here's my timer. I'm gonna sit, and even if I just sit on the couch for 5 minutes and like try to calm my mind and focus it, it hopefully will go somewhere. So, it's March and I'm 2.5 months in, basically.
Dude, so it's as I threw my phone on the ground so it didn't buzz on the table here. Have I ever told you my truck story?
No.
Okay, so
This is your new truck, your black one?
well, it's not new. I've had it since 2020, but yes, it's that one.
Okay.
So when I first started at Delta, I started in late September of 2017. And the reason that I started there was not because I saw this wonderful career trajectory for me. I started at Delta because I wanted to be mentored by someone who had this humble confidence about him.
Hmm.
Every time Tim walked in, I knew he was an entrepreneur, and I thought that was cool. And he came in with his family, and he just had this demeanor that it was like he was in control, and it was calm, but it was this again humble confidence that I really was like, that guy's got something I'd love to learn more about.
Hmm.
And then the thing that really got me to want to start working at Delta came from the fact that when we were trying on, I mean, you're in Colorado, when you try on kids ski boots at the beginning of the season because you're trying on for different sizes,
Hmm.
you had 3 kids.
Yeah.
And so we're going through that. Eventually you stop talking about ski stuff.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about business and ultimately what I found was like these books that I was reading, he knew the authors. And so there was one
Oh,
day where he came to me and he goes, "Mike, you're I know that you're in real estate, right? Like you've got," and I'm like, "Yeah, we've got some properties that we've invested in and super early on that we had it at that point." I couldn't even remember. I couldn't even believe he remembered.
yeah.
And he goes, "Dude, I'm in this mastermind with this guy who's crushing it in real estate. Now I don't, not like I know his bank or anything like that. I'm telling you though, he's crushing it right now. And I hear his books are amazing. People rave about them in our group. You should look him up. His name is Dean Graziosi."
That's hilarious. I love
And
that.
so I look up Dean Graziosi. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm reading his books. I'm like, yeah, these are pretty dang good. It turns out
Yeah.
he's the founder, essentially, like the not like the very first person ever did, but the one who blew up No Money Down wholesaling and
Yeah.
in real. So I go to work for Tim in late September.
Okay.
Barely put in my 2 weeks. Maybe I hadn't even at this point. And one of the things that caught my attention is that Tim drove this 2017 Ford Raptor. It was the coolest truck. I'm like, man, what an awesome truck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one day I took a picture of that truck and it was September 2nd, 2017 at 8:52 a.m. It was in front of our shop.
Okay.
And
Love
I
it.
specifically remember taking this picture. I knew exactly where I was. I knew exactly what I was doing. And I know that I'll never forget. I thought one day I'll drive a truck like that. 2.5 weeks later, I start working for Tim Schmidt at in September of 2020, October of 2020. Sorry, a couple of
Mhm.
years later, we had created the outside sales team. We had tremendous growth. We were about to double our expected seven-figure year and blow it out of the water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And uh, and that was when I bought that exact truck from
That's
Tim.
amazing. And you bought it
So
from Tim?
from Tim, that
That's
exact
awesome.
that picture is the truck that sits in my driveway.
Oh,
And
that's so cool.
so when you talk about visualization and the importance of it, I have no proof behind any of this, but what I do know is that I understand the idea of the reticular activation system, and I
Mhm.
know that when I have been extremely focused on things and thought about them many times,
Mhm.
somehow, some way, I've found a way to find the solution to that problem, and it happens over and over again. And the more I dive into it, the better it goes for me, and I wish I would do it more.
Well, expand on that a little bit. Like when you say you focus on stuff, is that just like it's always at the top of your mind? Is it you're doing things actively, like sitting down and manifesting, building a strategy behind it, or like expand on that a little bit more?
I think that there's if you've ever read the book Traction, there's another book that's called Rocket Fuel.
Hmm.
And in the book Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman, they talk about how there's two different types of people. And essentially it's the visionaries and the integrators. And that most successful businesses sub 50 million, but even beyond, most sub 50 million successful businesses have at the helm a visionary and integrator, and they each benefit each other. The integrator is like, we need to make sure we do things in these certain processes, and the visionary pushes it the opposite direction and says, let's create the hurricane and then clean
Yeah.
up afterwards.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm much more of a visionary in the sense of not that I have these wild ideas and ambitions and that sort of thing, but
Hmm.
more of the idea of I know that there's always a way to make something possible because anything
Hmm.
I've ever possibly could have come up with, someone's already done it before
Hmm.
in some capacity. And it's up to me to find and assemble the pieces.
Okay.
And so when I think about the things that I really want in my life, I think that the vast majority of people, including myself, don't truly dive in enough to what exactly do you want? And it's like, well, you could come up with surface level things very simply, but to dive deeper and deeper of like, why do you want that thing? What would it change about your life? What is it?
Hmm.
Is it the thing or is it the experience from the thing? Is it
Hmm.
the experience from the thing you think you're going to have and it actually has nothing to do with all that? Those are the deeper questions that I think are really cool. And I found that the more I dive into it and come up with the average day in a perfect life and things like that,
Hmm.
I find that there's things that are already within my life that I can capitalize on that I've missed. Maybe that's that reticular activation part where all of a sudden you're like, dude, it's right in front of you. How did you miss this?
Hmm.
It doesn't happen when you don't spend time focusing on what is it exactly that I want for me? What is
Yeah.
it exactly that I want for my team? Where could we go in the future? What experiences could we bring? How
Hmm.
does that affect my family? Like that's the stuff that unfortunately sometimes keeps me up at night and is a blessing and a curse.
Those are good things to keep you up at night, though. Do
I
you
guess can be.
would you would you say that that would be a form of like resourcefulness almost of like when you're spending your time focusing on it and you're just like, okay, I have all these pieces? Because like I think of a visionary as somebody like and I'm not taking anything away from you, so don't take it in that context. But like, let's use an extreme example. Elon Musk, right? He was like, I want to go colonize Mars, which is like way out of the capacity of like anybody else, right? Like, probably very few people had ever thought of that at one point, right? He may have dreamed it, but he was like, hey, no, I'm going to make this happen. And also, as we now know, creates a lot of hurricanes and then cleans up afterwards. But some people, myself included, it's like I look at the skill sets that I'm building and I now focus more on resourcefulness, right? Like I have a vision, but I almost wonder as you're working through this and you're speaking about this, are you thinking about it from a resourceful part? Are you connecting dots? Or are you just like, no, we're going to go create this thing. Now I got to figure out which pieces to pull from.
I would say that you're dead on. You're not taking anything away from me. I think that I've found that I have the capacity to put things together in a manner that other
Mhm.
people don't and find a way towards the pathway, finding a way of we have to in order to get here, we have to do this, and it gets us there. And here's why this is so cool. And
Mhm.
that starts with the idea of the possibility and then
Mhm.
reverse engineering that.
Mhm.
But I can't really the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. I can't really ever come up with a time where I'm like, man, nobody's ever come up with this idea and I came up with it.
Yeah.
Thing that I've
Way to
ever,
go.
yeah, right. Like I've just never had that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were in a business acumen thing for work at one point, and someone was like, "Hey, that sounds like a Mike Bauer quote." I'm like, "Listen, all my best shit is stolen." And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's so true. I'm really good at just assembling things. And so the visionary aspect, I would say, is more of actually looking at other real visionaries and
Mhm.
going, I bet I could take a piece of that or something very similar to it and apply it for our own team.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's what a visionary is, right? Everything is stolen. I mean, even Steve Jobs, right? I mean, that's exactly what he was known for. Is like all the pieces were there. He just put them together, right? And so and then made it happen. I think that's the other piece. But I like the visionary with the integrator part of that. And I know we didn't officially kick off kind of this recording, but I want to keep pulling on the thread. And then at the end, let's talk about you and how people can find you because you are such a wealth of knowledge, Mike. But pulling on that thread a little bit of when you're creating your team, right? So I've been able to have the pleasure to watch you grow, you personally, but then also your team and your company. And I think that that's a really tremendous feat because not a lot of companies get there, not a lot of people get to experience that. But as you're, let's use the term resourceful or strategizing, you have this vision of something that you're going to create. You have people now that you move into places. And so when you're convincing somebody to move in this direction, what do you what are you focusing on? Is it making sure the dots connect logically? Is it storytelling characteristics? Is it just a communication path? Like, what do you do to actually start moving people into the necessary positions to start attaining that vision?
Mm. Yeah, that's man, a ton of impact there. So I think it makes more sense if I give a slight context of my background. So I work for
Sure.
Delta Defense. We're the service provider to the U.S. Concealed Carry Organization, the U.S. CCA, the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. And when I first started working for Delta Defense, that was back in 2017. Again, I started there because I wanted to be mentored by the founder, the CEO, Tim. And I went from working in the call center to being asked to start an outside sales team in, let's call it September of 2018, it was. And since then, we have now, a little over 5 years later, we've got over 130 sales reps across the US. We've got 22 different district managers in 7 different regions, and I run our Midwest region. And so over the course of that time, tremendous amounts of experience that I've had. I really do believe that there's no amount of money that I could have paid to go through all of these experiences. I'm incredibly blessed. It's I won the lottery of experience.
Mm.
The things that we're now at now, we I would say over 90% of what we do as an outside sales team is referral partnerships with ranges, retailers, and firearms instructors. And so we started that team as when I was the first rep for this team, there's 4 of us. We were being sent out, and it was we need to sell USCCA memberships, but we don't want to do it in a way that is a distraction. We want to be a benefit to those businesses. And so when we first went out, it was how do we first provide value, knowing that on the back end, we're going to be able to sell USCCA memberships. But first and foremost, we have to be a benefit to these guys, not just someone who comes in and goes, here's the next product. Because you can do that in any business, but who likes that guy?
Yeah.
And so we're really blessed to have that vision. And when we started that was kind of the core. And so we sell in classes, typically in front of groups of 5 to 20 people. And now we also offer options with digital and all that stuff through our referral partners. As we continue to grow, what people are going to see from the organization is what we call moving outside of the classroom. Where are the other opportunities that we can start capitalizing on? And that's where, to answer your question, how do we put people in my terminology, I use position to win. How do we put people in a position to win? I think that's a leader's number one trait and characteristic is putting someone in a position to win. It means using the resourcefulness that they have, the gifts that they have, the skills that they have, the location that they live, all of that to their advantage. And I'll go to something that I learned from a guy named Sammy Knight, who helped take, if you ever heard of the brand Mossy Oak, he helped take them global many, many years ago. And he talks about the bullseye strategy. And it's something that when we started looking at the things that succeeded, it's spot on accurate for us. And so the bullseye strategy is, he said, Mike, if you look at your team, the things that you're really good at right now, even if they're not perfect, that's your bullseye. That's your day-to-day things that you're doing right now. He said, Mike, tell me if I'm not right on this. Every single time you've tried something that's brand new, it always takes longer, costs more, and is more complex than you initially thought. Right or right? I'm like, yeah, completely accurate. He said, so what he has found in business is that when you focus on taking that bullseye that you currently have of your day-to-day, and if you think of metaphorically coming out one ring removed, that is the way to focus on the built and growth of your team.
Mm.
He said, every time if you look at something that you've done that's metaphorically 2 or 3 or 4 rings removed, we like to think that it's like, oh, it's only like 2 or 3 or 4% different than what I'm currently doing. But the reality is it's like 2 to 3 to 4 times different.
Hmm.
As he's telling me this, I remember this 2 years ago. I'm like, gosh, this is so exactly correct. Like we were like, oh, it's not going to be that hard, and it's way more complicated. And so what we found to do is, as we found these other growth opportunities, we've really dove into, is this really the thing that is close enough to what we're already doing, where there's not going to be a huge growth curve to start expanding out to that. Can
Mhm.
we, for example, a guy who's spending a lot of his time in classes, and when he's starting to go doing more B2B work on places that are outside the firearms industry, can he spend like 20% of his time building up that book of business over here without taking away from the core of what he's doing right now? And
Mhm.
if it's getting more than that, well, maybe we need to go and create a whole nother team. But is that even really worth doing right now? And
Yeah.
so it's really just taking what are you already good at? Who are the people that you have? And then being resourceful, but only spreading yourself out that one metaphorical ring to make sure that you're not going so far beyond what you're already doing that it completely throws everything off. And now two things are failing.
Yeah. No, that's a great analogy. I've not heard that before. So kudos to you and Sammy Knight for sharing that because I think that's really good. It makes a lot of sense, especially from my experience where, I've run businesses and actually lived through that where it's like, oh, there's this shiny thing over here. Let's pivot. And all of a sudden now you've just slowed everything down, people's time on the learning curve. And as an example, capital is like being flowed over there to make up for the lack of experience. Sometimes you got to hire, other people to help step in and educate and get things off the ground. So that's a tremendous analogy. I think it works really, really well in business. As you're looking at those, let's say one or even two rings out, and you're looking at the skill sets of the people on your team, and let's focus on the sales aspect because one of the things I want to talk to you about in this conversation is really getting better at storytelling and really helping people start out in sales because especially for young entrepreneurs, even people maybe that have lived in corporate America that aren't necessarily great at storytelling or sales, you're always selling something, right? And so there are skill sets that apply to every single conversation. So as you're looking at your resources, your current team, and you're saying, okay, this is a ring out, this is two rings out, what typically are people in their own skill sets not usually aware of? Like, where do they really need to work to help start bringing people in, getting better at sales, starting to land some of that additional growth?
So I think that even more so, one of the things that I found is that almost any business that I've gone and been a part of, or at least just observed from afar, not even internally, they all think that they're unique. They all think that they're different,
Mhm.
and they're both accurate and wrong. There are huge similarities on ways of doing business, ways to sell, ways that you do it one to one versus one to many versus B2B versus B2C. I think that there is enormous amounts of overlap that are always there and present. What I think that we underestimate is that a lot of times, even when we hire the perfect candidate, you can use all the profiles, the way that you can look at what someone's naturally good at versus what are the things that maybe they need some help with naturally, and what are the learned skilled traits and all. You can look at all that, their resume, their history, their background, all of that. But what I have found is that even our best candidates, when they first come in, it's much more important for us to help them see around corners and avoid potholes by giving them the playbook. And
Mhm.
then when they get into the business, they're still going to have to go through that first 20, 50, 100 reps of whatever the thing is to get
Mhm.
good at it.
Yeah.
So, for example, even with our guys, I just met with our Chicago team. There was a half dozen of us in a room, and we're looking at these opportunities of going more B2B and how they can do personal reach outs to these business owners and all that.
Mhm.
Everything you're imagining right now, that's what we went through, right? And so we're going through the playbook, and these are guys who are, man, without giving real numbers, extremely successful.
Mhm.
Very few people as a W-2 employee would go, nah, that's not a great gig. They'd be like, dang, sign me up.
Yeah.
Very, very successful sales guys, professionals, been doing this for years, very tenured team. And we started talking about how they could be reaching out to these B2B groups, and they had 1,000 questions.
Mhm.
And ultimately, what it was helping them see that this isn't that different from what we're doing. It's a one ring removed. Every single day you walk in and you talk to business owners that are ranges, retailers, and firearms instructors. This is just a little bit different because it's not within the 2A industry,
Mhm.
but everything else still translates. It's still the relationship. It's still connecting. It's still making sure that this is a benefit to them first and foremost. And all those things, it was so interesting how even though it was that just a single ring removed by every reason, it still took them the time for, we are going through this for about 6 hours of Here's how you would reach out to them. Here's how you would do follow-up. Here's a good cadence. Here's this. And everything that we talked about was almost spot on what they're doing day to day when they built their first book of business 3 years ago.
Hmm.
But in order to translate that, they're still going to have to go and do the reps and suck a
Yeah.
couple times and then finally go like, oh, this is what Mike was talking about. So I think that that's the thing where it's like you got to go through the process and have someone who can help you see around corners and maybe avoid some of those potholes, but
Hmm.
then also be there to go, hey, you hit that pothole, it's all good. We can fix this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just got to go through the process.
Yeah, I know. And when you're, let's talk about that playbook for just a quick second, and then I want to pull in the thread for the latter part of what you just shared. So the playbook is that, hey, here's FAQs, like this is what you're going to expect, this is how you reach out to people, and then you sit down in a room and actually talk about those things. Like how scripted actually is it, or is it a parallel case A? This is what you normally do. This is your current B2B business. Here's the one ring out. This is the business you're going after. Here's the parallels, and this is the differences. How does that work?
So there's two different things that you described there, and I'll point out both of them. So when we bring someone who is brand new to our organization, they got to become a property and casualty insurance licensed individual. They go through weeks of training, and in total, it's start to end before they can go out and start creating these partnerships is almost 5 weeks. And so the that process there's a map that shows this very clearly. I used to always think that the more that people learned, their confidence also followed that skill curve. And the reality is that any single person you or I have even interviewed, including ourselves on any interviews,
Mhm.
our confidence is up here because we don't know all the systems. We're like, put me in, coach. I don't need training. Like, let's go. And then we teach them all the things of the CRM and the
Yep.
follow up and
More
the things
questions, more questions.
yeah, compliance and sure, like all that
Yeah.
stuff. All of a sudden, it's like, and then we kick them out into the field and say, "Good luck, go make some money."
Yeah.
And that's like the worst thing that you could do.
Yeah.
And so what we did, we started with in our Midwest team back in 2023. Is I got our four district managers overlooked about 25 sales guys we got. And we're like, what's the best practice? And let's just go high level without all the systems, without the CRM, without all that, except for where we need it. Let's just start like, here's where you start and here's where you get to. And it started with how you reverse engineer the income that you want. And then here's how you go out and create these partnerships. And so it's a 25-page playbook.
Hmm.
And even after they go through all of new hire training, which is a lot more like onboarding, they now have something that's a working doc that they can go through and say, man, I might not want to call my district manager because I don't want them thinking that I'm stupid for this question, but maybe it's a super legit one. They can start with that playbook and they can go take a look at it
Yeah.
and go like, oh, this is sort of that process. And if it doesn't click at that point, then
Hmm.
they can feel super confident reaching out to their district manager. Hey, I read the what we call it the Midwest Bible. I
Hmm.
read the Bible and I didn't find the thing that I'm looking for. Would it be like this? And then we train them on how to ask questions there. So the first playbook that we have is legitimately something that is our best practices for our guys.
Okay.
The second part, which is now what are we doing with the B2B? We're throwing it all against up at the wall and we're doing the whole thing over again, which is you start with the shotgun approach and then eventually we'll get to sniper. And that's how we started our outside sales team as well. It was
Yeah.
like, here's the different ways, and I don't even know if it might have been more than six. Here's the 6 different ways we think we could be a benefit to these companies that we want to partner with. And then we figured out here's actually the one that probably creates the highest ROI in all things outside of even money as a
Hmm.
benefit for us in these partnerships. And then we really dialed it in, and then we kind of expanded it again once from there. So
Yeah.
it's kind of that you try everything, and then you narrow it down into here's the one thing that's really working, and you get really good at that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that second part is the thread I wanted to pull on. So let's keep going down that path because that runs parallel to the next question I had for you, which is how do you take some of these skill sets and bring them into your personal life? And the example I will give is this morning, actually, I was speaking with somebody on my team and we kind of navigated into more of a personal question, right? You're in a relationship, you have a partner, how do you navigate some of the more difficult conversations? And a lot of that, kind of my feedback is like, hey, you're recognizing you're self-aware enough to realize you need a change, right?
Mhm.
And you're not sure what the solution is or if there even is a right solution. So you've recognized one, what you're currently doing isn't working any longer. So you have to do something. But where do you start to do that next thing? And there was a whole conversation around, lack of a better term, like analysis paralysis, right? But I like what you said of this shotgun approach because in my personal life, this is kind of where it starts. Like Bree, my wife and I, used to get frustrated with each other because we wouldn't sit down and like talk about a schedule, right? It was just like, hey, Mike, you got to be ready in an hour. And you're like, well, I have a call, or like, hey, I'm not really in the best of mood. I haven't planned for that, right? And so it was like, okay, well, every week we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about our schedule. For you, when you're dealing with these salespeople, how much are you prepping them for like, hey, we're just going to try some stuff, right? You're going to fail and it's inevitable, but that's okay. Like, how much do you encourage them to actually fail, continue to open up those communication channels? And then the follow-up question to that is like, you personally, Mike, have you been able to bring a lot of these tactics into your own personal relationships, and has that helped you?
Sure. So I think that, and I'll reiterate, I feel incredibly blessed for the experience that I've had in such a short amount of time frame. It's astronomical. I truly believe that most people would take 20 years to see what I've been through in 5 years. And that's not saying anything about me. It's I tripped into this opportunity because
Yeah.
someone had a cool truck. Like so the what I would say is when we first started out, it was very different from how things are today. When we first started out, the it was extreme transparency, almost to a fault, where it was very clear that this is something that we are trying, that we are not 100% sure how it's going to work, but we want to hit this target up here. Here's the goal that we're trying to hit. And we want to get there through the avenue of being a benefit, not a distraction.
Mhm.
We believe that the best way to do that is these couple scenarios, those kind of 6 things that I threw out there I was
Yeah.
talking about. We threw out, here's the different options that we have. Some are in person, some are digital, some are creating leads, some are direct sales, some are group sales, some are one-to-one, some are on a phone, like all these different avenues. And we're like, we need to assemble a team of people who are willing to go out and do this thing. And that was the start of it. Then from there, once we dialed into, again, kind of that shotgun down to sniper approach, we narrowed down on here's the things that are actually going to help you and the partnerships that you create make money very quickly.
Mhm.
And then you can branch out from there. And so the communication that we now have today with our teams that are in 5 years into existence now, a little bit more, is much more when you come into this organization, especially the sales team specifically. I need you to be on the Midwest team as someone who has proven yourself to be resourceful and a go-getter, all those things. But I need you to show me that you're coachable. Because if you're coachable, I can help you to see, I keep using this analogy, see around corners that are going to come up. There's going to be potholes that you're going to run into. And if I can help you avoid those and get through them as fast as possible, that's what I want to do. But if you can't prove to me or the teams that are helping train you that you're coachable, you are worth less to me, not worthless, worth
Yeah.
less to me than somebody who comes in with a lot less experience, but is ready to go, is ready to be coachable, and follows the playbook.
Yeah.
The second part of that is the people that come in, they go through the training program with our learning and development team, and then they follow the Midwest Bible that I was talking about.
Mhm.
When they start reaching out to their team members who played a part in putting different aspects of that Bible together for us, the
Mhm.
playbook for us, they're reaching out to guys and going, "Hey, I saw this thing. How does that apply in Iowa over here, for example?" Man, that guy in Chicago who he's talking about is like, dude's listening to the thing that we're teaching him. Now I want to give him my best, most valuable stuff. And that actually creates the strong culture that we have as well, which
Yeah.
is almost more important than anything. And so I think that it comes down to when you first start out, it's something that's brand new. If you're assembling a team of people, because you're always going to go further with a team, you're going to be more nimble by yourself, but most people want to go further. You assemble the group of people and you make it very clear this is where we think we're going to get to. This is what we think the avenue is going to be. But there are going to be a lot of screw ups in this process, and we're going to be ready for that. And we were blessed to have that as a team. Then you get to the point where it's like we found a rhythm of things or a certain thing that works. Let's document it top to bottom and let's see if we can replicate it and see if is it just this one person who's finding success? Is it just this one market that's finding success? Or is it something that's replicatable and we can actually speed up the growth and learning factor for somebody?
Yeah.
And that's where then we get to that point where people now are ramping up so much faster than ever before because they got the playbook.
Yeah.
How I do that in my own personal life, man, it's probably there. But I spend so much time focusing with the work stuff.
Mhm.
Um, there's not an immediate way that it comes to mind. I think it just comes down to I love helping. put people in a position to win. And I have
Mhm.
found that if there is a way that I can help someone learn from someone else, or I can connect people, if there's a way that I can do that, then it just things have a way of working out for me. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's extremely frustrating in the moment. Sometimes it takes months to a year for the thing to finally work.
Mhm.
But I found over and over again when I'm focusing on the people around me and seeing how can I help them get better, help get myself better in the process. I've gotten much better at being able to help teach others as opposed to just being the aggressive dude who's like, dude, are you being an asshole or do you actually want to help me?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
young hustler, it's like, let me show you how to do this.
yeah.
Dude, calm down. But the more I've helped other people and learned to be better at helping others, the better things have gone for me in life.
Yeah. Well, that right there, that ending part, I mean, that's a huge one. And we don't have to talk about family if you don't want to, but kind of where I was going with this direction is in my own personal life, right? You said the aggressor, like that's, I'm a pretty aggressive person when I want to be, and I have to really watch that, especially around like my kids and my wife. And helping somebody doesn't mean you're always trying to get what you want out of the deal. And there is an art between the two. And I think you're actually probably more proficient at this than I am, where it's, hey, my wife and I are going to have a conversation, right? Or, I don't want to see my kids with me doing this. Using your example of looking around the corner, they're going to get into a pothole. I don't just want to yell at them and chastise them. I want to actually explain like what it is. So I was trying to like direct it more into those personal where, hey, you're a protector, but you're a guider and a leader while also letting people kind of have free will and express their own thoughts and opinions back to you in that sense.
So I'll go back to something we were talking about offline earlier. So there's someone who I again, just one of these things where I've tripped into being in the right rooms at the right time. I got to meet this guy who's got over $1 billion in real estate assets, named Yurik. And one of the things that I recently heard him talk about, and it was on a podcast with his group of guys that he's in. They call themselves the Brotherhood, and there's a bunch of successful guys, and they go on these trips. They were talking about a recent trip the last summer to Italy, and he said, "You know what I'm trying to do?" And Yurik's got this heavy Polish accent that I won't try to mimic, but he's like, "You know what I'm trying to do with my kids who are all, high school, kind of middle school age, that they still have at home." He's like, "What I really want is I want to be able to assemble this group of uncles for them that they feel comfortable going to."
Mhm.
So when I'm with the group of people that we call our brotherhood of guys, they're very successful in business, but they also are striving to be successful in their home life as well. And he's like, I know that there's certain things that my kids are going to feel comfortable coming to me to. And there are other things that as much as I'd love for them to come to me first to, it's just not a reality that I'm the first person they ask about that.
Mhm.
And he said, myself as a father, what I've come to learn from these group of men that I'm around is the best thing I can do is to create an outlet for my kids where they're comfortable to go ask someone else outside of me and my family. And I know that they're getting really, really good information. And
Mhm.
so when we're going on these trips and we're traveling around a couple times a year, I know that all of the negative things that maybe perplexed him in his life or whatever, that they're not having those negative conversations and things that got him into trouble as a kid and most people in trouble as kids.
Yeah.
He's like, I want my kids to be able to have these people. And so I look at that as, and the reason why that stuck with me so much, I just heard this about a week ago, is because I've talked to Christina, my wife. We have 4 children that are all under the age of 10. And I'm like, I really want to be that guy that has a group of people that don't have to be the friends that we go to the bar at, not the typical group of guys that you think of, but successful in whatever right we choose, that my kids get to have exposure around because Ed Milet talks about more things are caught than taught.
Yep.
Man, I've seen that in my life. You know how
Mhm.
many times someone has told me something and then I look back and I experienced it and it like that's the thing that changed me, not from, mom or dad telling me.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that I think I really bring from a lot of this, where I want the example that I live to include my kids to be a part of it around the people that I look up to, so
Mhm.
that when the day comes that they're old enough, whether they want to start understanding something that's business wise, athletic wise, like anything like that, that I'm not the only one and only source resource that they come to, that they have other people that they feel comfortable asking questions, and even more importantly, I feel comfortable that whoever they're asking is giving them the kind of example and information and stuff that I would hope that they would give them, not just some dude on
Yeah.
the playground.
Yeah. Dude, I'm so happy you brought that up again, and I literally have goosebumps when you were resharing that. I mean that sincerely. It was interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up because you actually shared some additional context to what we were talking about offline, and one of that was, people. people are only comfortable around certain other people. It's just the way it is, right? I have my own vibe, you have your own vibe. And I liked what you said about creating this outlet where it's like you're building this greater network, this greater community of trusted sources. So if your kids don't feel comfortable, hey, dad's going to be super pissed. I screwed up, but I know I can call Uncle John or Uncle Nate or whatever it is. Like that's really awesome. And I like that you said that because that is something for people to think about. Usually it's like, this is the family unit. This is all the family unit is. And when you're building out this trusted network, you want to make sure that you're backing what those people can share, the values that they have, the ethics that they have, because they will go somewhere else, whether you like it or not, right? It could be a friend. It could be somebody who's just a terrible parent, right? My kids are young like yours, and I already see this. Like quite frankly, I judge some of the parents, and I'm like, I don't know if like this is gonna work out long term, right?
Yeah.
But I like that there is that intentionality behind it, and I want to give you a compliment, Mike. And again, I mean this sincerely because you're using the phrase, I tripped into these opportunities. And I want to correct you because I've only known you for a couple of years, and some of the things that you're talking about happened pre-Nate in your life. But I would say you carry with you an openness and an attitude. And as we're educating people on, what are the tactics or what are the mental transformation pieces that people can go through, not everybody has that open attitude. A lot of people are afraid of change. And I think one of the things that you do, and you're kind of brushing under the rug in this conversation is, hey, I tripped into this, but you didn't trip into it, right? Maybe God put somebody in your life at that moment in time, but you were open, you were willing, you were excited to pursue a new opportunity. And you didn't do it because, hey, I want to make a lot of money. You went into it saying, hey, I don't know where this is going to go, but I think I can learn something from this person or from this experience. And that in itself is extremely powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, I think that the when part of that might have even just been the way that I grew up. I was always that person that looked up, probably more than I needed to, at people. Like if someone was good at something, I automatically thought that they were older than me. I don't know if it's the same for you, but I'm like, man,
Absolutely.
that guy can skate. I bet he's better, whatever. And he's like, ah, actually, he's a grade younger than me. He's just tall. So, but I've always been fascinated by greatness, and I've always been fascinated by people who were able to do the uncommon. And that started with skateboarding. I went on to be a professional snowboard coach and had some success with that. And I just I found over and over again that most things that we think are extraordinary can be modeled, and that a lot of it comes down to just a lot of hard work and resourcefulness in the right place at the right time with the right people. But that is the one thing that I think is the constant throughout my life is I want to help other people get better. And the way that I've found to be able to do that is to learn from others and try to apply that in my own life and helping others there. So I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah, I think that just that constant curiosity has gotten me to into some pretty cool situations that I'm really proud of.
100%. And you've done it with intent, and it's important to draw this out because I was in that same boat. I found myself mid 30s drifting through life and really just kind of feeling like, man, I'm just not where I want to be. But I also had to realize I also kind of had the attitude for a long time of like, well, I kind of know everything, right? This is my box, right? I'm good at it. I don't need to look outside my box. And then the more you find out, the less you know, right? We've all heard that cliche statement. The more you're educated, the more you realize, like, the less you know. And I think that's just really important for anybody who's looking to expand their horizons is, common threads, everything can be modeled. I think that is true, right? I think even being a visionary to some degree, you can model from somebody else, right? I'm learning right now how to connect different dots from people, right? I enjoy this conversation and a lot of what you're sharing here. I'm still learning a ton about you, like earnestly. And I think going into anything and just realizing like, hey, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn is the first step to true change for a person when it comes to communicating with their sales team, when it comes to that integration piece that we're talking about, putting together these playbooks. It's also understanding that shotgun approach of like, hey, we don't know everything. We probably know very little, but we're going to try something. We're going to get it going. And then we're going to use our resources. We're going to use our team and really try to dial it in so we hit that bullseye on the target.
Yeah. Yeah. Spot on. Spot on.
No, I like it. Well, anything else, number one, that you'd like to share with the audience, Mike?
Man, just be curious and if you're a parent, be the example. I think that the two things that it really hit home for me was this idea of, eventually your kids are going to figure out who you are, and they're going to look back at today to figure out who you are back in the future. And so I've been very conscientious of whatever it is that I'm doing right now, my kids are remembering, and they will remember. And even if it hasn't sunk in for them in 5, 10, 15 years, eventually they're going to look back at the person who I am right now. And I want to be proud of that person. And the second thing that I really appreciate is, this is a common phrase. It's thrown around entrepreneurship all the time, but it's don't tell them, show them. And when I first heard that it sank in. I heard it 100 times, but when I was at an event in 2021, for some reason it finally landed. And so with our real estate, I started having my son Tommy, who is now 7. He came with, and he would start being a part of these things and these conversations, and with contractors that we'd meet with and stuff like that. I truly want to be the person that my kids are able to go, I do or don't want to be like dad, but I know exactly who he is to make that choice. Not, I don't really know if I want to be like dad, because I just found out in my 20s or 30s that dad was a completely different person that I thought he was.
Yeah.
And now I got some decisions to make. So I want to be that person that is like that. And I'm not telling other people how they should or shouldn't live their life, but it's been a really, really good change of mindset for me to realize that at some point I want my kids to be proud of me, not just for who I am in the future, but who I am today.
Yeah, man, those are gold nuggets. It brings up a saying that one of my previous pastors used to share all the time, and still does it. It's the mess is in the message, right? And we've all had to reflect, at least at a certain age, you reflect in that 20s to 30s of like, I don't want to find out who my parents were at that age. It's real. I mean, I look back and I've had this conversation with my wife and even my sisters, and it's like, ooh, the things that we assumed about our family when we were naive and didn't understand responsibility or didn't have pressure and stress for ourselves, conveys a very different person and environment and situation than the person than what you realize happens when you're at a certain age and you're dealing with it yourself. So I think those are gold nuggets.
And
Second, Mike, how can people find you? How
well,
can,
let me throw
uh,
one more final thing
yeah,
out there, and I'll flip it to the silly too, which
yeah,
is also, we thought that our parents had their stuff together when they were in their 30s and 40s, and now we realized that was completely inaccurate.
completely.
And we still figured it out. So
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing too, which is like listen, we gotta, some stuff is worth taking serious, but there's probably plenty of other times we're taking stuff way too serious. We're on this rock floating around. Like, we better, not everything needs to be serious. So there's that
Well,
too.
well, it'll make you happy then. Just sorry not to interject, but I changed my word of 2025. I haven't shared this actually openly, but my original word of the year was earnings, right? I was really focused on that, and I was listening to a sermon about 2 weeks into January, and I just realized like I was under a lot of pressure. I was just trying to like force some things, and I was like, you know what? I just want to have more fun, right?
Yeah,
In my professional life, in conversations like this, and the networks that I'm building, and just time with my kids and my wife, like I just want to have more fun. And so I just changed it to fun, and that's all we do. And it's all about that silliness. It's about helps me be present, helps me
yeah,
take things not too seriously. So I like that silliness because it's an absolute necessity, especially what's happening economically in the environment, but also like as we're building this pressure and starting families, like it's not easy. So you got to have some fun in there.
totally. Yeah, absolutely, man.
Well, where can people find you, Mike?
I'm probably most active on Facebook and Instagram. Just look up Mike F. Bauer, Bauer. Pretty easy to find there. And I've recently started posting some stuff on LinkedIn. I really love sharing the lessons that we've learned as a team, and I want to continue to do that more openly and publicly. And so I'm actually even putting a little website together to start being
Yeah.
able to share some of that with others in the future. So should be able to find me, Mike F. Bauer.
I love that, dude. And you're doing big things. You are going to continue to do big things. So I'm going to keep following and learning from you along the way. But it's been pretty awesome. So appreciate your time today.
Of course, appreciate it.
All right, man. We are a community dedicated to growing people's lives one day, one action, and one thought at a time. And the big part of this is learning from others. So because of this, we've created a free Habitual Growth Facebook community where you can find interviews, additional resources, bonus content, and so much more support to help you along the way in your growth transformation. And the best part is it's all absolutely free at no cost to you. So if you're somebody who's wanting to make a change in your life, head over to the app or the Play Store and download the Habitual Growth app now for your free trial. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, you work for somebody else, or you're just determined to make changes in your own life. These principles and this process work for everybody. For more information about habitual growth or any questions we can answer for you, shoot us an email at info@habitualgrowth.com. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the next video, and until then, keep inspiring others to do more.